hear that stomp? Pull up a chair, let your shoulders hop. Tiny tales from the tallest trees. Mini pines, come and sway with these. Hey, mini pines, true crime time. Kick up your heels as the stories unwind. Relax your mind, let the past chime in. We laugh, we learn, let the good tunes spin. Mini pines, true crime time. Sip a little calm while the decades rhyme. Settle right in as the ages sing. History's a hoot with a little swing.
Is like one of my favorite things that we do. So good evening and welcome on in. Tonight, there's a stretch of road in the middle of Nevada where on most days you could lie down in the center lane and take a nap before another car came along. 98 miles of 2-lane blacktop, high desert on every side, mountains the color of wheat coffee, a single tiny town, and a name painted on a green road sign that promises you something the asphalt itself can't quite deliver. The Extraterrestrial Highway. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking the name is just a gimmick, a little roadside marketing, cooked up to sell t-shirts and alien burgers to passing tourists. And you wouldn't be entirely wrong. But here's the thing that I love about this road. The aliens everyone comes looking for, nobody's ever proven they were there. But a visitor did come from space, a real one. And it left a scar across this desert so enormous that you can't even see the whole of it from the ground. A scar so big that the road itself runs right through the middle of it. And almost nobody driving by has the faintest idea. So, pour yourself something delicious. Settle in, because tonight we're driving the loneliest road to the stars. Good evening. Welcome back to Mini Pine. It's me, Becca. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for listening, and I really do hope that I bugged my kids enough to bug their friends enough to tune into this particular podcast tonight. I know I'm not sticking into the Pacific Northwest. However, we did discuss that Dan and myself went down into Las Vegas for Crime Con. And while we were there, we were going to be visiting different parts of Nevada. And this is something that I really wanted to see. And I thought, it's strange. It's unusual. So it kind of fits into what I like to talk about between all the ghosts and folklore that's out there, that's for sure. So this one, I love it. We're from the Pacific Northwest and we were visiting, and I think that that's kind of appropriate as far as, aliens. Aliens like to visit other places. So this is one of the stories that is going to keep doubling back on itself. So every time you think that you found a strange part, there's a stranger part underneath it. So let's start where the strangeness started, which is not with the aliens at all. It's with a perfectly ordinary dirt road. Officially, the Extraterrestrial Highway is Nevada State Route 375. It runs about 98 miles diagonally through the empty middle of southern Nevada, from a spot called Crystal Springs in the southeast up to a wide place in the road called Warm Springs in the northwest. 2 counties, hardly any people, and a whole lot of sky. And it began its life as nothing special at all. Just a dirt track scratched across the desert around, 1932. The kind of road ranchers used. The kind of road that doesn't make the news. But then something odd happened to it. By 1942, the road simply disappeared. Not physically. It was still out there in the dirt, but it vanished from the maps. And it wasn't alone. A whole web of roads across that part of Nye and Lincoln counties quietly stopped being printed. The land they crossed was being folded into a secret, a place the world would eventually come to know as Area 51. You have to remember, back in this time, we didn't have GPS. We didn't have a computer in our hands telling us where to go. You had a compass. And everywhere you stopped at a gas station, you could find a paper map. Rand McNally, look them up. Those were the maps. Those were the atlases. You had one in the glove box. You had one in the trunk. It came out when you were taking long trips. You marked those exits. You knew exactly where you were going. That is how you navigated back then. So in 1942, you couldn't say, hey, give me directions to your car or to your phone. You had to know exactly where you were going. So for a road to no longer be indicated on that map that you were dependent upon from the gas station to get you to your next destination simply wasn't there. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Now, don't worry, the road came back to the maps around 1946, but even then, you couldn't drive much of it. The public was kept off. It wasn't fully reopened until 1957, paved a year later in 58, and finally given its proper number, State Route 375, in the year of 1976. So before there was a single story about flying saucers, this road already had a habit of keeping secrets. It had already learned how to disappear. And that, I think, is the soil the legend grew in, because when you have a road that the government once erased from the map and a military base nobody will officially talk about, the human imagination does what it always does. It fills the silence with stories. And for that, we need to talk about one particular evening, May 24th, 1989. A Las Vegas television station, KLAS, ran an interview by a reporter named George Knapp. His guest sat in shadow, face hidden, and gave his name only as Dennis. And what Dennis said was, well, it was a kind of thing that doesn't stay in shadow for long. He claimed he worked at a secret site near Area 51, a place he called S4, tucked into the base of a mountain by a dry lake bed called Papoose Lake, about 15 miles south of the main installation at Groom Lake. And his job there, he said, had been to take apart a flying saucer. Not metaphorically, he meant it literally. He said there were 9 craft, not built by human hands, smooth, seamless, metallic, and his assignment was to figure out how one of them, the one he nicknamed Sport Model, actually flew. His name, we'd soon learn, was Bob Lazar. And before long, he stepped out of the shadow and set it on camera under his own name. A decision he later described as a kind of insurance policy. His reason? It's harder to make a man disappear once everybody knows his face. Now, at the heart of Lazar's story was the fuel. He said the craft ran on a substance the rest of us had never heard of, something he called Element 115. According to Lazar, this material could bend gravity itself. No combustion, no thrust, just a craft that warped the space around it and slipped through, which would explain those impossible right-angle turns people swore they had seen in the night sky. And here's the detail that has kept Bob Lazar's name alive for more than 35 years. In 1989, there was no Element 115. That slot on the periodic table was empty. It was pure science fiction. Then in 2003, so pretty recent, scientists in Russia synthesized it. Element 115, it was officially named Moscovium and added to the periodic table in 2016. Just 10 simple years ago. So, was he right? Were you able to bend it? This is where I want to be honest with you, the way I would want someone to be honest with me. Because the believers and the skeptics both have a point, and the truth is more interesting than either side alone. So yes, element 115 turned out to be real. However, the version scientists made doesn't behave anything like what Lazar described. It doesn't bend gravity. It barely exists at all. It decays in a fraction of a second. Lazar's answer to that was that the version he worked with was a stable, naturally occurring form you could only find off-planet, which is convenient because it's also impossible to check. And his background didn't hold up well either. The reporter, George Knapp, couldn't confirm Lazar had attended the schools he claimed. Los Alamos, where Lazar said he'd worked, said they had no record of him. So most scientists file Bob Lazar firmly under hoax. And yet, and this is the part I find genuinely fascinating, even his critics admit he changed everything. Before Lazar, Area 51 was a rumor whispered among a handful of plane spotters. After Lazar, it was global. He didn't prove there were aliens in the desert. What he did was give the desert a story, detailed and technical, and just plausible enough to keep you up at night. And people came looking for that story by the thousands, which brings us to a mailbox. About halfway along the highway, there once stood the single most famous mailbox in America. It belonged to a man named Steve Medland. Steve and his wife Glenda were ranchers. They'd moved out to a big spread in the Tikaboo Valley back in 1973, years before any of this nonsense had started. They ran cattle. They kept to themselves, and out by the road, where the mail carrier could reach it, they had an ordinary mailbox. It just happened to be black. Now, remember, out here, there are no landmarks. You can drive 40 miles and see nothing but sagebrush, cactus, and the occasional cow. So when Bob Lazar told people he could take them to a spot along this road to watch scheduled flights of those reverse-engineered saucers, he needed a place to meet. Somewhere you couldn't miss. Oh, the Black Mailbox. And so they came. UFO hunters, the curious, the true believers, they'd pull off the highway in the dark, set up lawn chairs and telescopes in the cold desert air, and point their eyes at the sky over Groom Lake, waiting. Oh, poor Steve Medlin. Now, imagine it from his side. You're a cattle rancher. You just want your mail. And suddenly, strangers are gathering at the end of your driveway every night. They start leaving letters in your mailbox. Not to you, but to the aliens. Some of them got bold enough to steal his actual mail, convinced his electric bill might secretly contain government secrets. And at some point, because of course this happened, somebody shot holes in the box. So Steve did something wonderfully practical. He took down the Black Mailbox and put up a new one, made of thick, bulletproof metal with a heavy padlock. And this is my favorite part. He added a second, smaller box beneath it, labeled simply Alien. Because if people were going to keep mailing letters to outer space, they could at least stop mixing them in with his bills. At the peak of this craze, Steve Medlin was reportedly getting more than 100 letters a day addressed to the extraterrestrials. He never believed in any of it, by the way. Ask him about the lights in the sky, and he'd tell you flatly that he didn't think aliens had anything to do with it. He was just a man who happened to own the only landmark for miles. And here's the bittersweet ending to the mailbox. The original was finally taken down for good around 2015. Since then, it's come and gone, replaced, stolen, replaced again, painted white, painted back to black. The last few years, it's mostly just not been there. An empty patch of gravel beside the road. But the pilgrims still come and stand on that spot. Because the legend doesn't need the mailbox anymore. The mailbox was never really the point. The point was a place to stand together in the dark and look up with hope. And you don't need a padlock for that. And I'll tell you, when we drove down this stretch of highway, we went all the way down into Rachel, Nevada. Or up. I want to say we were kind of headed north at that point. To this little motel and an inn. It's called the Little Alien. I love it. They have really great burgers there. And on our way back, we knew that we wanted to get to the Black Mailbox because there should also be a road heading from that mailbox to the back door of Area 51, where you can get in just a little bit further or far enough, and then you could kind of see what's going on back there. Well, we drove, and we didn't see it. And so we turned around. Now, what we did see on the way into Rachel and in the way back are cows. It's free range. And I'm talking like no fences. Your cows are just out there. And they don't care about the cars. They don't care about the people. They just care about what they're eating and if they can find any water and all the plants that are out there. I shit you not. As we were driving in, we thought large rocks. And then we thought, oh, those are shadows. Oh my God, they're moving. Oh my God, those are cows. I mean, they were huge cows. Now, where I come from, when it said that the animals were free range, they still had barbed wire fences on some little wooden fence posts. Enough to keep the cows from deciding that they wanted to wander onto the road. Out there, on the stretch of 3, it's not. That's not the case. There are no fences. Those cows are roaming wherever they want to roam. And the only thing that would prevent them from getting to the main stretch of freeway are the little built-in cattle guards into the pavement. That's it. That is it. So when you are driving, you gotta be on the lookout for those cows day or night, because let me tell you, cows damage cars like nothing. But we did find that mailbox spot. And I will tell you, we both got a little sad. You could see the cement post where the original mailbox was, but it's been so vandalized. It's been knocked off. It looked like at one point in time it might have gotten soldered back on there and just knocked off again. So now, just a hair back from that one, stands another mailbox. Not a real mailbox, if you will, but someone has taken a black insulated lunchbox and turned it on its side so that you can open it up, which we did. And on the inside, we found things that people have left there. Stickers, cigarettes, lighters, other various tobacco products. It made me giggle. And the stickers. Oh my goodness, so many stickers all over the post, all over the mailbox itself, if you will. And even at the beginning of where we took the Y in the road to get onto the Extraterrestrial Highway. Huge, huge sign. Absolutely lovely. Covered in stickers. As if all of us as travelers have said, we're here. We've been here. Here's my little memento. So for me, it brings a smile to my face. Like, the living history, if you will. Absolutely, absolutely amazing. But it is. It's such an empty stretch of road, desert, as far as the eye can see, and then the mountains. And as the sun set, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's so beautiful in there. I know, desert, right? Who would ever say it's beautiful? But I will. And I want to tell you about the part of the story that almost nobody who drives the Extraterrestrial Highway ever hears. Because while crowds gathered at a mailbox, scanning an empty sky for visitors that may never have come, they were standing the entire time on the wreckage of a visitor that absolutely did. Let's roll the clock back, not just a few decades, not even 1,000 years. 380 million years. Back then, this whole stretch of Nevada wasn't a desert at all. It was the floor of a shallow, warm, tropical sea. One geologist described it beautifully. He said it would have looked like the Bahamas. Clear water, sunlight, reefs, sponges, corals, strange armored fish drifting through a living sea. And then, in an instant, something came down out of the sky. We call it the Alamo impact, a boldy. That's the term for one of these incoming objects estimated at somewhere between 1 and 5 miles across. It came screaming out of the sky and struck that shallow tropical sea, and the violence of it almost impossible to hold in your mind. The strike threw up walls of water, mega tsunamis, geologists think, as tall as 1,000 feet. Waves that tall racing outward, tearing the seafloor apart and flinging the shattered debris across an area something like 1,500 square miles, roughly the size of the state of Rhode Island. Whole reefs, whole ecosystems ground up and scattered in a heartbeat. It left a crater, and not a modest one. When geologists pieced it back together, and it took them years, scrambling over more than 20 mountain ranges and the desert heat to do it, they estimated that the crater was somewhere between 69 and 93 miles across. Miles deep, too. One of the largest impact scars on the entire continent. And the rock left behind by all that destruction has a name. The Alamo Breccia. Breccia just means rock made of broken pieces, all jumbled and cemented back together. It's the fingerprint of the catastrophe, full of shocked quartz, the kind of crystal only formed under impact pressures, and faint traces of iridium, a metal that's rare here on Earth, but common in things that fall from space. Now, here's a line I want you to carry home with you tonight. If you drive the Extraterrestrial Highway, if you cruise past the alien signs and the gift shops and the spot where the Black Mailbox used to be, somewhere along that road, near a rise called Hancock Summit, you are driving through the crater. You are inside the wound. The cliffs and the layered, steeped hillsides around you are the rubble of that ancient sea, lifted up and turned to stone. So think about that. A road named, as a joke really, for visitors from space. A road where thousands of people have gathered to search the sky for proof that something once came down here from the heavens. And the proof? Well, it was under their feet the entire time. Not a saucer, not a little gray man, but a genuine messenger from space, 380 million years old, written into the very stone the highway is laid across. The desert was telling the truth all along. We were just looking in the wrong direction, up when we should have been looking down. So let's say the story has its hooks in you, and someday you want to drive it yourself. Here's the lay of the land. You pick up the highway about 140 miles north of Las Vegas, and I cannot stress this enough. Fill your tank and bring water. Real water, more than you think that you need. The gas stations out here are scarce and far apart. And in summer, the heat sits right around 100 degrees. This is not a road where you want to be caught short. And let me tell you, just outside of Rachel, there is a gas station. Thank God there is a gas station. And guess what? Ladies and gentlemen, this gas station, it's not open 24 hours. So you can't walk in and put a few bucks down on the counter after 5 p.m. You better have a debit card. You better have a credit card. So the pumps, yeah, you pay first and get your gas. But cash after 5 p.m., it's not a thing. So there's exactly one town along the whole route. It's called Rachel. That's where you're going to find the little alien. Blink and you'll miss it. The population hovers somewhere around 50 people, most of them living in mobile homes. The town's so small, it has never once had a post office. It was founded on the 4th of July, 1996, and named after Rachel Jones, the first baby ever born there. In Rachel, you'll find the one real business on the highway, a little motel, bar, and restaurant called The Little Alien. That's Aleininn, spelled like a pun on alien because, of course it is. There's a model flying saucer hanging from a tow truck out front. Indeed, indeed. Inside, the walls are covered in photos of UFO sightings from around the world. And the ceiling is papered with money left by travelers from every country, if you can imagine. And if you've ever wanted proof of how far people will come for a story, just look up at that ceiling. And it's true. It's there. I saw it. You got dollar bills with names on it hanging from the ceiling above the bar. It is tiny. It is homey. And I will tell you, it's one of the best damn hamburgers I have ever eaten. One word of caution, and this is a real one. Most of the highway is open range. I talked to you about those cows. That means, yeah, they're wandering all the time. Day, night. These are black cows. These are dark brown cows. And a black cow standing on black asphalt under a moonless desert sky is very nearly invisible. There are no street lamps out here lighting your way. That's what makes it perfect for stargazing. Now, there are accidents out here every year for exactly this reason. So if you drive it after dark in the night sky out here, far from any city lights, it's genuinely one of the greatest sights of the American West. Go slow. Keep your eyes open. As for how many people make this drive, it's one of the quieter roads in the country. On a typical day, only a couple hundred cars travel the whole length of it. You'll have a long stretches entirely to yourself. It's true. When we were driving, I think we passed 2 cars as we were headed toward Rachel, and we were coming back to Las Vegas from Rachel. I honestly don't remember passing any other cars. I really don't. I think it was just the sagebrush, the cattle, and the cacti, and whatever other creatures roam out in the desert at night. You have to research that. I'm not very good at that. Oh, bats. We did see bats. Oh, my goodness. It was awesome. I'm not going to lie. I love bats. So I personally keep coming back to the shape of this story, the way it folds in on itself. A road that learned to vanish from maps. A man in shadow who gave a desert its legend without ever proving a word of it. A rancher's mailbox that became a cathedral for the hopeful. And under all of it, older than the legend, older than the road, older than nearly anything you could name. A true visitor from the stars, its arrival written so deeply into the ground that we paved a highway across the scar and never noticed. We named that highway for aliens, and we were never sure they were there. And the whole time, the desert was keeping the receipt. I think that's why I find this place so moving in the end. Not because of what might be hidden in some hangar at Area 51, but because of what's not hidden at all. What's lying right out in the open, in the rock, in the light, waiting for anyone willing to look down instead of up. Thank you for taking this drive with me tonight. If you've ever stood on a lonely road and looked up at a sky full of stars and felt that particular ache, the wondering whether anyone anywhere is looking back, then you already understand. Everyone who ever pulled over at the Black Mailbox were all just trying to send a letter to the dark.
Well, that's our show tonight. We laughed and kept it light. From the first hello to the last goodbye. That's our show tonight.